Hello, thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to our Q3 Success Network Policy Committee meeting. We're happy to see you all joining us and happy to see that hopefully everyone is off to a nice, exciting start to their new school year. Today in our meeting, we have a nice agenda ready for you. We have a really good mix of folks who are going to share all sorts of topics across the policy pieces when it comes to college and career readiness. So first, we are going to have a little bit of conversation about an upcoming dual credit policy academy that some folks from I don't know what just happened. It changed out of slideshow, right?
It did.
I don't know why it did that. Okay. Let's bring it back. All right, so we're going to talk about upcoming dual credit policy academy that we have a team of Illinois folks planning to attend. We're going to spend a decent amount of time talking about the PACE framework. First, an intro about what some of the updates to the PACE framework are, and then we actually have a few leadership communities that we're going to spotlight that are doing some really awesome work when it comes to the PACE framework, and so we're going to hear a little bit more about them and what they've done in their communities. We're going to have an update on some of the Higher Learning Commission policy, and then we are going to finish up with the new Career Pathways Dictionary, which relaunched yesterday. I'm very excited to share that with you. And then a little bit of an update on our transportation work group, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So with that, welcome and introductions. So please feel free to share this in the chat. And then also if you want to update your Zoom name to include either your organization or if you're affiliated with a leadership community, you can also put that in your Zoom name. But just kind of share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and if you also feel particularly inclined, what you are excited for in the fall. Personally, I just like the weather. I am a sweater weather person. I like to wear some cozy clothes and not be sweating. So I am very excited to pull out my sweatshirts, my sweaters. A day like today or yesterday is my ideal situation. So I am loving that weather right now. See, folks. People love fall, seems to be the consensus. Pumpkin, I also love pumpkin things. I feel a little bit like I should be ashamed with it, but I'm not. Pumpkin coffee, pumpkin cake, pumpkin whatever. Ooh, bike rides. That sounds pretty cool, Mike. Oh, chili and football. A lot of football answers. Right. Halloween is another common answer. Halloween, I always feel conflicted as an adult about whether or not to dress up for Halloween since I don't have children. Football. All right, thanks everybody. Again, if you want to update anything in your Zoom name so that if you chime in at any point during the meeting, you can share, where you're, what organization you're with or what leadership community you're with, that would be awesome. And then a little bit reminder about who I am and who our other lovely facilitator is. My name is Laura Monagudo. I work with Education Systems Center at NRU. We are one of the organizers for the Success Network, and Emily and I facilitate the policy committee. So if you've been on a few of these, you probably recognize my face. I feel like we have put together a really good lineup for you all today, so I'm excited to kind of get into it. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit about an upcoming dual credit policy academy that some folks are attending.
Yeah, I can jump in, Laura, while we're waiting for Erica and Sharmel to join. So the College and High School Alliance, alongside JFF Jobs for the Future, is putting on a series of dual enrollment kind of state policy academies. Many of them are kind of one-day academies. Some of them are virtual, some of them are in person. And Illinois was invited to apply to join for an in-person academy in September. So there are two academies happening. One that's on promoting intentional dual credit through policy. They say dual enrollment to be kind of the catch-all. I know that in Illinois, we mean specifically that dual enrollment is are courses that are taken by students on the college campus, but College and High School Alliance and JFF kind of need it to just broadly capture dual credit and dual enrollment overall. But so Academy 1, which Illinois won't be participating in as a state, is around promoting intentional dual credit or dual enrollment as through policy. The one that the Illinois team will be participating in, and that's going to be led by ISB, and they should be joining us any minute here to share a little bit. I think we told them 9:15, so that's probably why we're moving more quickly than I think we expected. But the ISB team or someone from ISB and ICCB and at least one practitioner are going to be attending the dual credit, the Academy 2, which is around student success and supporting student success through policy. And so, included a little blurb here from the College and High School Alliance. And, so it'll involve other states presenting about their work to improve student support services, including advising and counseling and all those kinds of things. But they'll also be talking about kind of having some state team time to talk about what kinds of policy interventions might be helpful to support that. I'm going to be attending the Academy 2 as one of the sort of field experts, because in Illinois, we've done a really good job of promoting intentional dual credit through policy. So some of the things that I'll be highlighting there for the group will be things around how the Dual Credit Quality Act and the Model Partnership Agreement promote strategic dual credit, particularly kind of core academic coursework aligned with the Illinois Articulation Initiative, as well as career pathways, early college credit courses in career pathways, so aligned to that career area of interest for students and their career pathway. And things like the College and Career Readiness Indicator under our state's ESSA plan, which includes kind of dual credit, but not just random acts of dual credit, but really strategic dual credit, again, core academic as well as career pathways. And how things like the Perkins Model Partners and Study Guide, created by a number in partnership with the Illinois Community College Board, as well as a number of different partners who are here on the line and led by Megan and Juan Jose from our team who are here, promotes strategic dual credit. So we've got a lot of the policy pieces around strategic dual credit in Illinois. And so I'll be sharing a little bit about that, and hopefully the states who are participating on that front will find that helpful. I think there are some interesting states that are going to be participating in both, but maybe I'll pause there and see if there are any questions as we sort of, like I said, await ISB team members to join here.
So Emily, this is just informational, right? Like the team's been assembled that's going to attend. You're just letting us know this.
Yes.
You're not asking for participation.
Yes, correct, Cassie. Yeah. So basically the invite was assemble a team of 3 people. So it was, and so I'm sneaking in on the side, and we'll get to kind of participate a little bit in both, but that's literally only because they had asked for someone to present about kind of the policy work that we've done in strategic dual credit. But I think, generally, and hopefully we're able to hear directly from Erica and Sharmel about sort of their goals for this work and sort of what they're hoping to get out of it. There will be, like I said, a lot of team time and to sort of make sense of what they're hearing from other states. And so I guess, maybe to pose a question to the group, I'm curious, sort of, when you think about student supports around dual credit, what are some of the things that kind of come up either as things that you find important to focus on, or challenges that you typically see that might be worth the Illinois team kind of spending some time on in this context. And feel free to either speak up or drop in the chat. Thank you, Vince. So making sure that counselors are fully aware of the opportunities. Yeah. I think one of the things we often hear is, counselors are asked to do a lot. And so how do we make sure they have the information they need without them being the only ones holding the water there, right?
I think helping students make the decisions between dual credit and AP and other forms of credit, it's not well understood by students.
Yeah. Rodrigo, I'm seeing your chat here about, emphasizing the counselors and the advisors together to support one another. And as students are navigating dual credit, so that handoff. I'm curious if you also mean sort of the handoff between secondary and post-secondary advisors.
Yeah, absolutely. So both. So I think a lot of it sometimes is just, given Cassie's comment about making decisions in terms of dual credit AP and your comments about strategic dual credit, oftentimes that's very difficult for school counselors to be able to process through in the students in that very limited amount of time, not just the benefits and value of dual credit, but ultimately kind of that pathway that they're constructing for the student, that program of study. Like, the technical information about dual credit courses really comes from academic advisors. But I think that there's opportunities here to be able to go ahead and provide those resources and information for school counselors, given that they're the ones more present with students, right? And so there's a lot of technicalities that go behind choosing class, and ultimately, the difficult decisions that a family has to make. And it's part of the developmental process of the student. And so it's not just the enrollment, but it's also like, how do you support a student's development in and out of dual credit? And so, yeah, and then to your point, you commented on like the, how Illinois has been moving to further ease students into post-secondary, making the best, giving them the best value for their involvement. And so I think oftentimes that's still an interesting part that has faced a lot of challenges. Students still find themselves kind of getting trapped in that transition process, and really taking account for that acceleration component that we all believe should be part of dual credit, but oftentimes it's not really showing.
Yeah, thanks, Rodrigo. Erica, welcome. So we ended up moving a little bit quickly. So I was able to provide a little bit of background on the dual enrollment academy and what I'll share about in the kind of intentional dual enrollment through policy. But I think folks are eager to hear more from you about what you and the team are hoping to get out of participating in Academy 2. And thank you for joining. I know you've got a very full schedule.
I do. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here to talk with you all. And I think, is Charmel here yet?
I haven't seen Charmel. Oh, she is?
Okay. Yeah, she is. So she is, Charmel McGee is.
Oh, so we've got two Ericas. You're both marked as Erica. There it is.
Yeah. Oh, so Charmel is our newest team member in standards and instruction at ISB, and she is our mathematics consultant. She has also graciously agreed to take on dual credit and advanced placement programming, and she's pretty passionate about it, and she's really doing a lot of work to improve student access in those areas as well. So as Emily said, we put together a proposal and have been accepted for Academy 2 in the College and High School Alliance. And our focus really is increasing access through working with school counselors. I think they have been largely left out of the conversation, at least on the ISB side, We don't have a strong presence with the school counselors. So we're really hoping to improve that. But I think in the investigations I did and all the conversations we had, I think they are a key to success here in getting students increased access. It was interesting when I was working on the proposal with the team, I did a lot of digging into historical documentation and looking at how dual credit came to be in Illinois. And interestingly enough, I found that in the 90s, there was a report that pointed out the exact same barriers and arguments against dual credit that we hear today. And so a lot of those are related to that relationship between the community college and the high school. So I think we've got some work to do there. And I'm excited that we have, our team is a joint effort of ISB, ICCB, and our high school administrators. So I think we've got a strong position to really affect some change here. Honestly, from what I'm hearing from the field, there is a number of districts where going the advanced placement or AP course route is the path of least resistance for them. Just because the community college that they're in district for has put up significant barriers to offering dual credit. I see Vince nodding his head. So we're hoping to make some headway there. And I think, conversations have swirled around standardizing what is required of the high school teachers to be dual credit certified, if you will, that will say, if the teacher meets these standards, they should be able to teach dual credit in the state, period. It's an interesting tension point because the community colleges will say our high school teachers are not qualified to teach dual credit, but then the majority of community college educators, I would say, are not qualified or credentialed to teach high school. So you have kind of this turf war. And ISB has definitely not taken that position. But when that argument is put up to me, I'm like, well, if you want to get technical, like most of the community colleges teachers don't have the endorsements or the PEL to teach high school. So, we could kind of get into a tit for tat there, but that is not what is best for our students. So we're really focused. This team is really focused on how do we move forward and how do we improve access for our students.
Thanks so much, Erica.
Yeah, so I'll stop talking now and take any questions or comments anyone has.
And I'll just also flag that we're going to talk a little bit more about dual credit, other dual credit issues later in the conversation today as well. But Beth, I see you've got your hand up.
Hi, I know I'm just a guest here, but if I may, this is a very hot topic at our school at Evanston Township High School. And as college and career coordinator, I feel very lucky to be here today while you are speaking, Erica. So I just wanted to also alert, and Charmel, with your role, to also be mindful of the counselor role in needing the colleges to be more transparent about admission practices as relates to the competitiveness of using dual credit, dual enrollment versus, if I may say, AP courses. In a school district that offers both, there's some gray as to which is viewed as being more rigorous, based on some of the things that you mentioned just a moment ago about the standardization of the courses. And I feel like for counselors, that becomes confusing as to how to advise their students, because colleges will say, when given the choice between a school, when a school offers both dual credit and AP appears to be the more rigorous of the options because of the standard that can be assumed, right? And so conversations with colleges become important from that competitive admission standpoint. Now, obviously, we know the transferability of the course is one thing, but just looking at admission on a transcript becomes important. And so counselors are going to need guidance on, where students are looking to enroll or to apply and potentially enroll in colleges from an admission standpoint as well. That was just a hot topic that came up yesterday in conversation with our dual credit manager.
Sure thing. Thanks, Beth. So I'm gonna just offer one bit, which is A, we're going to talk a little bit more about dual credit later. B, I want to try and focus the conversation on sort of what you guys want to elevate for Erica and the Illinois team to explore through this academy. And also, there's clearly a lot of appetite to talk more about dual credit just generally. So feel free to drop things in the chat too, and we can definitely have continued conversations about this. But Beth, you're right that like counselors need, as we're talking about supports and counselors, like they do need to know sort of how to make these value propositions and how to make sense of it for their students. Vince, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick. So anyway, Eric and Sharmell, I'm really glad I'm here today. I'm here with you. I'm here representing the school counselors across the state of Illinois. We're here to partner with you. So we meet monthly with Heather Lucan, who works in the ISB office. We have an advisory council of over 50 school counselors that meet with Heather, and really looking forward to partner with you and to get any information out, resources that you need. We have quick access to the entire profession of school counselors in Illinois.
Yeah. I find it a travesty that we only have one school counselor position here at ISB.
But we have one, right? And we've leveraged it really well.
I find, as somebody who used to be a high school teacher, I find it very odd that we have one and she is in the CTE department. So, I'm standards and instruction, and I would like a school counselor person. I think special education should have one. Like, I think that should be a position that's kind of standard in most of our departments that are student facing, especially, but I don't run the world, so.
Love that. I'm open to pro bono work for ISB too. Just to get the word out there.
Great.
Okay.
Great. And I would note on Daryl's comment, cost is definitely part of the conversation. I have had quite extensive conversations with a number of superintendents about this. And I do know some community colleges are offering dual credit at no cost. So there are some community colleges who have figured this out. So I think, part of the work we will do here is exploring cost and just different models of how dual credit is being paid for and provided. Promoting at any conferences. So we have our first meeting with the Academy September 27th. So that's coming up here in 2 weeks. So once we have that, we don't have a whole lot of information at this point because it was just get the application ready, get accepted, and then everything kicks off later this month. So we do intend, once we have a big part of the work we want to do with this academy, and I don't know how much Emily told you, but is really kind of get statewide coordination. Part of my impetus of pulling together this application was I kept having meetings with separate groups that were doing research on dual credit access. And I was like, why are we not all together in a cohesive, thing where we're getting together at least regularly to talk about dual credit? So I'm hoping that's one of the things we'll accomplish here is coordination of efforts and also coordination of communication and marketing campaigns.
Yeah, I definitely think, and we can hold space in future policy committee meetings, Erica, to have you share out on what's kind of bubbling up for the group and all of that, because certainly there's so many as evidenced by the chat and folks' questions and comments overall, even just before you joined, like there are consistently challenges. Erica, to your point about the old research saying the same barriers, right, to dual credit, and they're both at a micro and a macro scale. And so I think the idea that you're bringing together folks to do some thoughtful coordination, particularly around the student support piece at a systems level, will be really powerful. And I think that we can definitely hold space to have you share out and connect again with this group. And, you know, as we've done with and Laura's going to talk a little bit about this later with the kind of transportation and work-based learning work group, you know, as particular issues come up, we can definitely stand up sort of parallel conversations that can support folks amongst this group to dive deeper on some of these issues as well.
So
Yeah.
my concept here is, you know, you have, I don't know how many school board members attend III, but it's a large group. I don't know if any of you've been there in Chicago.
Yep.
Before Thanksgiving. You
I
have
used to be a school board member.
Sure. So you have a captive audience, and school board members do hear some of this from their superintendents, hopefully. But it really, it can kind of drives home the message if people in the field are, you know, sharing some of the research and sharing some of the information about dual credit, because that's going to cause board members to go back and say, hey, why aren't we doing more of this? Why are we continuing to push AP when kids aren't passing AP exams and those sorts of things? And
Yeah.
not that I'm against AP, but our percentage of getting college credit post high school is much higher with dual credit. That's why I think we all agree with that. Same thing with IASA. I can't recall ever attending any, you know, administrator or superintendent meetings where dual credit is promoted to the degree that, you know, we get into the weeds about how to make it more possible and, you know, strategies that superintendents can walk away with. And the academy might be one of those. Is this an administrator academy? I don't know what academy means.
It's a national kind of consortium approach where there were, Emily, was it 4 states were
Yeah,
accepted
it's like
into
4
each
states per academy. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So it's not an administrator academy, sort of.
No, it's kind of a state leaders academy. So that's why it's us and ICCB, and then we have a superintendent in the mix as well. Yeah, so that's
Just that's my 2 cents on promoting.
Yeah,
this
I
group.
I support and agree.
Awesome. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to shift us off of this, but Erica, we are very excited to hear more once the academy happens. And so we'll definitely be tapping you to share, you and Charmel to share updates. And just, I think folks, this is something that, like, you know, obviously there's more appetite in this group to think about dual credit. So if there are particular issues around dual credit or dual credit policy or the way that it's playing out in the field that you think we need to explore more, drop that in the chat so we can kind of hold that thread and keep exploring that together. You know, I'm hearing some themes around needing to continually build and share the evidence around why dual credit is important, as well as kind of making sure that awareness is getting passed through a number of different channels, like schools count, like ISCA and like IASA and III and all of those for sure. But Erica and Charmel, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Have a great week.
All right. Thank you, Emily, for helping facilitate that conversation. Next up on our agenda is to dive in just more deeply on some of the PACE framework updates. So first, we're going to have Anna Isaac give us a little bit of an update. So I know you're in here. I don't see your box, but I know you're in here. So if you want to jump in and take it away. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My IT is blocking Zoom, so every time I try to do anything on Zoom, I get a pop-up and then it blanks out. So bear with me. So hi everyone, my name is Anna Moya with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And just to give you all some updates on the PACE framework, by show of hands on the screen, anyone not familiar with the PACE framework? Okay, so I see no hands on the screen. So very briefly, as of July 1st, 2023, we had to make the state agencies had to make some updates and expansions to the Illinois PACE framework along with other stakeholders. So we went through a process as we put it out for public comment and everything. So this is the official PACE framework that was adopted by all four state agency boards with ISAC, ISB, ICCB, and then IBHE. A couple of the things that happened with the framework is that it was extended to the 6th grade. So before it used to be from 8th grade to 12th grade, and now it has been extended to the 6th grade. Now, the framework from 6th through 8th grade, this is something that it focuses a little bit more on adolescent development so that students are able to better interact with the high school framework once they get to the high school side of it. A lot of it does focus on what came from the Illinois Gear Up curriculum. We're currently working on supports available for the middle school framework. It has been updated, Laura. Can I go ahead and share my screen though, because this was a draft version of it?
Yes, sure. That's my bad.
That's okay, sorry.
I thought I used the most current one, but I wasn't sure.
No, that's totally fine. And I can drop them on the chat as well. And you did ask me to share with you any slides, so that was my bad.
Are you able to share the
Yeah.
screen? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was blocking you. There you go.
Okay. So this is the official framework. So all of the original benchmarks from the 8th grade were incorporated into this framework. We split it from middle school to high school just so that if you guys know, Illinois is such a huge state and diverse state. There's a lot of unit school districts, but there's also a lot of just high school districts that have just feeder middle schools. So we thought this would be a lot easier to for schools to be able to adopt, implement, and then move forward with. So these were a couple of changes. The domains or like the categories that we use at the high school level are a little bit different at the middle school levels. We have aspiration, self-advocacy, and planning. Again, a lot of adolescent developmental benchmarks that a student should be supported to develop in order for them to make the connection once they get to the high school, right? Like, why are you going through career clusters? If there are certain things that need to happen at the middle school level for you to understand that this is not just a task and make a connection with their future. And then for the high school framework, this is going to be the official framework as well. Not many updates. It was just a matter of making some updates to the language of the framework so they could be more action oriented for the benchmarks, and then also a couple of them to be better aligned with college and career pathway endorsements and CCRIs. And then just, again, not too many changes, just making it more action oriented. It follows the same format as before. Now it's 9th through the 12th grade. But it was just a matter like we used to have on there for them to complete a FAFSA, the FAFSA. Now we have for them to complete a financial aid application just because, we have the alternative app that would also meet that requirement. So again, just minor updates to it. We made it a little bit more action oriented, and then for a couple of them, they just better align with college and career pathway endorsements on there as well. So those were the updates to the framework. Again, this is official as of July 1st of this year. This is going to be the framework that we're all working off of.
Yeah, and I think the idea here, thank you, Anna. I think the idea here was just to kind of refresh folks on the PACE framework before we hear from a couple of awesome practitioners about what it looks like in their context.
All right, let me get back to our slides. And we will move on with those practitioners. All right, so we have two leadership communities that we're going to highlight today. Pretty different communities, so you'll get to hear about PACE framework in a couple of different contexts. So we have Dr. Daryl Hogue from River Bend Community Unit School District, and then we have Beth Airy from Evanston Township High School. So Daryl, I think we're going to start off with you if you don't mind. You're on mute. I think I sent you over.
Yep. Sorry about that. Too eager to talk. So when we originally, when the original PACE framework came out, we took a look at it, talked to a few other folks who are doing PACE type work and sort of some planning, and felt like we needed to give the teachers a working model. I'm a super practical person, and so we wanted some working models at all grade levels for this to begin. Because to me, your entire school career is about career interest building, career planning, career seeking efforts. So we invited business partners, board members, administrators in all our grade levels, and teachers from K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 12 to join us in taking a look at what we were already doing in our classes. We are we've been in JA, Junior Achievement has been embedded in all our classes, really K9, I believe, in some capacity. And if you've ever seen any of the JA work, I do JA volunteering, and so I've taught multiple units, and it couldn't be more career minded. It touches every goal that we're asking older kids to do in their career interest planning. So would highly encourage you, if you don't have JA in your schools, reach out to your local JA folks. They have incredible content, really all the way K-12. They just do a really good job, and they look for volunteers. They place volunteers in your classroom, and it's incredible instruction at the grassroots level for students. So we took a look at what we were already doing and said, what are some important skill sets and activities that we can have? And so instead of by the end of 8th grade, we started by the end of 5th grade. So we included our elementary school in that, and you can see, what we have listed there. Again, this isn't earth-shattering stuff. This is very doable, and we needed it doable so that the teachers would buy in and begin to do this. What this has allowed us to do at the elementary school level is sort of unify activities as well. On our early release days, we do college and career promotion. We ask our staff to wear their college alumni shirts, that sort of thing. So again, it just gives us a way to uniformly address that part of the career plan, readiness plan. We again through JA ask kids to complete some inventories so that in 6th grade they are ready to kind of dig into this a little more. By the end of 8th grade, we've created profiles using what used to be career cruising software. Now it is, gosh, I just lost the name of it. it's another career software that we use.
Zello?
Zello, thank you. So that the student profile is ready to go and they've worked with it before they go to high school, so that when students get to high school, they can kind of take off and launch and move forward. As we were doing our planning, we asked, what can we do at each grade level that enhances career experiences? And that's sort of where we started with some of the things we were already doing. I'm sure you're doing some of these things in your current programs. We took a look at what we were doing, adapted it to what we wanted to add to it. And we are using this as well as part of our portrait of a graduate. So this will be kind of morphed into that portrait of a graduate, and we'll, grab some of these skill sets that we have here and move these forward. Again, I'm a practical kind of person, so we were able to connect with our local Chamber of Commerce. They came in and did some things in the 9th and 10th grade. They did a soft skills unit. It's a 5-week unit. The Chamber puts together with area professionals. They bring the professionals in, work with the kids on soft skill sets. We have a college and career class that is a requirement in high school, so kids will roll through that. And again, we can address a lot of these items here. What are some other specialty things that we apply? We also have a very robust work study program, and so our seniors get to spend a period a day, and we're on a block schedule, so 80 minutes a day doing career work study programming. So they sign up, we place them in a career activity of their choice, and they continue to do that their senior year. And it looks different for each career field and each placement. Some get some really super in-depth experiences, some get more shadowing experiences, but it's something they do not just for a short window of time, but the entire school year, and we give them credit for that. And we've also been expanding to give kids credit for summer work, summer career exploration, if they want to find a placement. So again, trying to think outside the box, undo our schedules, and try and untie students to a restrictive schedule that doesn't allow them to get outside and do these things. Any questions I can answer?
I think we also have the high school components of your plan in here too, right?
Yeah. Again, starting with the state's version of the PACE product, we just continue to try and keep building and creating experiences that students would be able to access during their 9, 10, 11, 12 years. Obviously, the practical side of things, we really want to focus on practical application 11, 12 as they're getting closer to graduating. 9, 10 more experiences within our system, but after the 11, 12, you don't have much time to get them ready for what their careers look like. And I say careers because whatever the career they choose, that might need a certificate, that might need 2 to 4 years of college, or it might mean nothing but entering into the career. So always keep the focus on career, and whatever that career requires is what will help them get.
And then we'll have folks hold questions until after the Evanston folks share a little bit about their experience, but feel free to drop questions in the chat meanwhile as well.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. If we're ready, should we move on to our Evanston portion?
Sure. Hi. So Beth Airy, College and Career Coordinator from Evanston Township High School. I wanted to start a little bit with our profile of our school. We are a school district, grades 9 through 12. So our PACE framework really focuses on those grades, and then coordinating a little bit with our elementary district. They are new to having a counseling staff. So we are new to developing a relationship with them as they're growing their counseling curriculum. But we have been focusing on our student population here, about almost 3,700 students. You can see our enrollment numbers, what that looks like in our National Student Clearinghouse data. We are about 75% college enrollment. So looking at that, we are currently focusing on what happens to the other 25% of our students who are not tracked other than a optional, well, I like to believe it's mandatory, but students think it's optional exit survey. While we're still capturing them as they're leaving as seniors, the data is not typically terribly accurate. And I know we're always working to improve upon those stats as to what our students who are not enrolling in college are actually doing. So still a work in progress on figuring that out in terms of employment, certifications, etc. But our team is doing a great job of capturing those students now as they're going into pathways and the workforce, etc. This is just the data that we had from our 2022-23 school profile that I'm sharing today. You can go ahead. So the way that we have started with our framework is in 2014, we created a post-high school, well, at the time was called Post-Secondary Planning Committee. We now refer to everything as post-high school to simplify the language a little bit. At the time in 2014, we were investigating individualized learning plans or ILPs that the state of Illinois, particularly the University of Illinois, had been presenting on as relates to services to students on capturing planning that they could do related to rehabilitation services for students through special ed, etc. And we were looking at that as how we can get these programs throughout 4 years of high school. And we named them our ICAP, our Individualized Career and Academic Plan. And right around that same time, the state of Illinois was coming out with the PACE framework. So I was really lucky to get to be on the ground floor of that and help review the design of the PACE framework and incorporate that to our ICAP. The way that we have stated our mission is really about students and their families having the tools to make informed decisions about post-high school options. And we've taken the PACE framework, while we use it internally, the way that the state and ISAC has put it out, we actually provide our families with a card that you can see on the screen here that I always say they can hang on the refrigerator and use as a checklist. Our families have appreciated having this format where the items with the stars are things that we do in school, and then the little squares are items that we offer to students through school, but are not through the school day necessarily. And so families have the opportunity to engage in attending our, let's say, our post-high school options program, and then they can check off whether or not they did that. And then we focus our areas of domain as in 9th grade on self-exploration, 10th grade on career exploration, 11th grade post-high school planning, 12th grade on post-high school decision-making. And this incorporates some of the things actually from the middle school model as well, seeing as we don't have that middle school focus. A little of the SEL, a little of the financial aid, as well as our career and college planning focus. So this is kind of how we've turned things into the visual model that PACE has started for everybody. Now in 2020, we changed from Naviance to School Links as our online tool that students use to sort of do the work that we ask them to do. And that was a big change during COVID. We have currently Freshman Advisory Study Hall, that's the FASH that's listed on the screen here, and Sophomore Advisory Study Hall. The Freshman Advisory Study Hall is advisory study hall where we have assigned advisors, where students have a curriculum with an assigned teacher that tracks and monitors what it is that they do with their curriculum through School Links. Sophomore advisory study hall does not have an assigned advisor. So students have curriculum through their study hall that they're expected to do on their own. And then if they want to go to other parts of the building or have other access to things outside of study hall, they have to show evidence that they have completed their curriculum for that week. And then junior advisory, we just started this year, and it literally is just Google Classroom. So there is no advisor and no study hall associated with it. It is just students doing the work at this time because they're choosing to do the work. So we're showing the data on this to our administration to show like how having an assigned advisor is significant to the completion of the work of our students. So actually in 24-25, we are moving to a 4-year advisory model. So we're doing all the work right now to figure out how we're going to implement a 4-year advisory model, because we can see the data that having freshman advisory study hall with assigned advisors has really taken hold, and our kids are completing the work that they're doing for their ICAP within the PACE framework. For instance, 92% of our freshmen have completed the personality profile this year already. 81% of our freshmen have completed the learning style assessment. And this is so far without any additional follow-up. So within Schoollinks, we can check and see who has not completed the to-do as part of the ICAP. And then we follow up with them in small groups or individually and have them go through the process of completing those tasks. And then one of the cool things since 2020, we know that 97% of our current 10th and 11th graders have set a career goal. And this is information that we did not have before. And these are tasks or expectations that were not part of the post-high school planning process before, that we can now engage with our students in counseling moments. And I think one of the biggest things about this process has been when we have information to give out to kids, when we have career speakers and career exploration opportunities, we can direct market them to the students who have indicated a particular career interest or career goal. So having them complete these to-dos as part of the PACE framework, as part of our ICAP, really has been significant for us. So I think that pretty much completes what we have done here at Evanston, and would love to take any questions.
Yes, thank you both. We have a bit of time for some questions. So the ones on here are just some preliminary ones that I came up with, but we have just about 5 minutes. We're running a little bit behind. So if anyone else has questions for either Daryl or Beth, obviously we would love to get those questions out there. You can put them in the chat. You can ask. I see Cassie, you raise your hand.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Beth. So the assigned advisors for freshmen, they're teachers in the building. Did you train them, or did they, like, what kind of support does an advisor get in understanding their role and what they should be doing during the advisory period, especially around the ICAP?
Yeah, so the advisors do get training. So they have training at the beginning of the year. They get regular contact with our advisory coordinator and support through the advisory coordinator. So there's constant communication ahead of what the ICAP task is going to be. So there's training on Schoollinks, so they know what it looks like, how it performs, how to look at the reports and understand what the tasks are that the students have to complete. And then any communication of clarification, etc. We have a point of contact for that.
All right. Are there any other questions? Oh, I see one. Someone was curious to learn more about outreach and communications done to parents about your different systems. I don't know if either of you want to offer some information on that?
So at Evanston, we initially, during the freshman orientation, do a letter to families about school links and ICAP and our Wild Kit Futures Day, which is an event that happens in October that's post-high school planning focused. So we do this sort of kickoff of things you can expect that are post-high school planning. And so that tells them about their login to school links. Again, it spells out the ICAP information, directs them to our website where it indicates, what the ICAP entails. And then we have like the cards, the physical cards that we do pass out at all of our events, so that families are getting them in their hands.
I would add that we mostly promote it through our buildings at each level, sort of what they're doing, what the teachers are doing in the classroom. Our principal does a weekly newsletter, so we put some of those activities in there. And same thing with the middle school and the high school. We haven't put this together as a checklist, which I really like this concept that Evanston is doing. So might look to grow in that manner. Thanks. Yeah.
I think you have some company in appreciating the checklist format. I see a request in the chat for a PDF version of it. I think for people, it sounds like some people want to share this with their communities, which is really our kind of goal with these leadership community spotlights, is to highlight really awesome things that are happening in leadership communities to support work across the state. So we appreciate that. We have a minute for maybe one last question. I have one I'm prepared to ask, but if anyone else has, I'll let one last call for any question. Oh geez, my mouse has a little roller thing and I get a little happy sometimes and scroll through slides. Okay, seeing no hands, nothing in the chat. My last question for you all is just if you have any piece of advice for folks who maybe are in the early stages, given the push that's come up with some of the state policy around the PACE framework, and encouraging districts to implement it, also that expansion piece, what would that be?
I don't know if this is for us to answer or for the whole entire group, but I would say just replicate. ISAC has a list of other districts that have created PACE frameworks and individualized them. They have multiple districts that have, like us, gone a K-8 version. No sense in recreating the wheel. Use what already exists. Again, ISAC's list is an excellent list. And so I would use those, start with them as a resource, and obviously invite your teachers and your stakeholders to be part of the process, because if it's top down, it doesn't work as well. Have them be part of your team that helps create the activities in each level, and keep them simple and keep them broad in general, so that they can be, especially at the lower levels, can be easily accomplished and applied. Obviously, the older the kids get, the more specific you need to be. And again, Beth provided an outstanding example of a checklist type thing too.
I would just say, if you're just starting out creating your PACE framework, take what exists and just highlight what you're already doing. Don't think you have to do everything this year, right now. What are you already doing? And then look at what you can add in programming, so that you're, doing things that need to be done because they're necessary. But, don't bite off more than you can chew right away. But like, that PACE framework is very robust as it exists right now, because it was something created by individuals who are doing the work, and it's exhaustive of all these things kids should know and do. But if your school program is not at that place yet, just highlight the things you're already doing, design your PACE framework, and then look at it and see what else you could be doing to make that, the future for you. That would be my suggestion, to not overwhelm yourself.
Great. Thank you both so much for participating in this spotlight section. I think it offered a lot of really helpful thought partnership and ideas for some of the folks who are working on implementing the PACE framework. Before we move on to our last piece, I do have contact information, and this will also be shared on our policy network, our policy committee section of the Success Network website. So the materials, the recording will all be there. One last piece before we move on to our next section. If there are any questions, or if anyone else has kind of advice for that last question, feel free to share it in the chat. We want to make sure that we're capturing any thoughts, any questions. We can always share later on or revisit in future policy committee meetings. So just keep that in mind while we move on to our next section. So Amy Galvin from Stanford Children is going to give us an update. We're kind of jumping around back to dual credit, but Amy is going to give us an update on some of the HLC policy credentialing information. So I will hand it off to you.
Thanks, Laura. Excuse me. I hope everybody can hear me. Hi, my name is Amy Galvin. I'm the Government Affairs Director with Stanford Children. This presentation is to walk you through a proposed policy change from the Higher Learning Commission. So as you guys know, the Higher Learning Commission is the accreditation body for 18 states, including all of our post-secondary here in Illinois. And this policy, I'm approaching this, and the way that most of the conversations I've had around this policy are through a dual credit lens, but it's really important to recognize that this policy would impact faculty credentialing in all 18 states governed by HLC, and impact all post-secondary faculty, not just dual credit. And again, we're coming to it through a dual credit lens, but I just think that it's important to recognize that this policy has much broader implications than what we're talking about. So as I think a lot of folks on this call know, one of the biggest struggles for expanding dual credit, and Stanford Children is a really big proponent to equitable expansion of dual credit, but one of those struggles is faculty credentialing. Not only are we dealing with an ongoing and worsening teacher shortage in the state, but we're also dealing with just kind of the difficulty of hammering out partnerships and making sure that you're balancing access with rigor. And so these conversations continue to be kind of thorny, I think, for both sides. And so with that kind of background, I'll share a little bit. What you can see on the slide right here is the current HLC policy around faculty criteria for qualified faculty. As you can see, kind of at the very top is overarching guiding principle is that qualified faculty members are primarily identified by the credentials. And those credentials are, by and large, academic qualifications. What is an academic qualification? Essentially, it means that that instructor possesses an academic degree relevant to what they're teaching. That degree is typically a master's degree or higher. And in the instance where that instructor does not hold a relevant master's degree to the stuff that they're teaching, they should have 18 graduate credit hours in the discipline or subfield for which they're teaching. So that is right now what HLC says that all dual or any college faculty, including dual credit instructors, should have. There is a mention of equivalent experience. It says essentially that the institution gets to decide. Some CTE teachers are qualified here, but by and large, this is not where we're seeing dual credit instructors. Next slide, please. The proposed HLC policy really broadens these guidelines. We interpret this essentially, HLC is kind of washing their hands of a lot of these conversations. The current policy shifts the guidance from HLC and says that institutions, meaning your post-secondary partners, they will be responsible for determining reasonable policies and procedures to determine faculty qualifications. The proposed policy goes on to say, and this is a first for HLC, that institutions may consider but are not limited to achievement of academic credentials, progress towards academic credentials, and equivalent experience. You could see I kind of plucked out some language there. I'll have a link at the end for you to read the full policy, which I encourage you to do. But some of the biggest things that are changed here is particularly around achievement of academic credentials. Whereas before it was very explicit that it had to be a master's degree, a relevant master's degree, and for irrelevant master's degrees, you'd have to have those 18 graduate hours. They've broadened that criteria to say an academic degree relevant to what they are teaching, and then it says completed a reasonable amount of coursework. It goes on to recognize for the first time, like I said, that progress towards academic credentials, which you can kind of see some definitions there. And then it clarifies a little bit around equivalent experience, but it's not particularly detailed. And unfortunately, it does not recognize previous years of classroom instruction as equivalent experience. We typically disagree with that. I think that is a good indicator of teacher quality. Research bears that out. We kind of push back a little bit on in our letter. But again, this is their proposed policy. So next slide. How does this proposal advance dual credit equity and access? Stand for Children is supporting this policy. And I know this is, we've been having a lot of conversations with people because there's a little bit of concerns here. And so I did want to walk through, essentially, we have two reasons that we're supporting this policy, and you can read those in our letter. First, this opens the door for a broader criteria of evaluating faculty credentials. As I kind of listed out there, that's a first for HLC. They were very black and white that it needed to be a master's degree. Now they're saying you can, an institution can evaluate faculty qualifications on a myriad of different metrics. They throw those three out there, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't force colleges to use them, but it also says you don't have to use these. You could use a combination. You can use your own, different metrics, etc. And then it brings HLC guidance in alignment with Illinois state law. As I'm sure anyone operating in the dual credit space knows, there's a lot of conflicting guidance out there. ISB, ICCB, HLC, the Dual Credit Quality Act, none of those pieces really talk to each other. And in some instances, they're in direct competition. So I'll take these each one at a time. So the first one, next slide, please. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. So the first one is opening the door to a broader criteria. And you can see kind of there's an opportunity and challenges kind of dynamic going on here. So first, as I've said, the post institutions may expand their faculty criteria. We see this as a positive thing. It could lower the relevant graduate coursework threshold. That may or may not be likely, which we'll talk about in challenges. It also expands the criteria for CTE teachers in the equivalent experience. We've had some people say, under this new guidance, you could have an accountant teaching an accounting class, which under the current guidelines, you would not be able to do. So there's a lot of ways and a lot of opportunities to expand dual credit instructors under this new guidance. And then there's also an opportunity to rethink equivalent experience for general education courses. So again, existing guidelines say that for general education courses, you must have that master's. This is an opportunity to think again beyond that master's for general education. Under the challenges, and we've heard a lot of concerns from superintendents and folks on the secondary side that colleges, if you remove that 18 graduate hours, they could increase it. They could say now we need 23 hours, now we need a full master's, and we're not allowing that. And that institutions are not required to adopt this flexible policies. They are, they're just going to pick the strictest policies possible. We address some of those concerns in our letter, but this is also part of a broader strategy for us to look at how to bring alignment to dual credit landscape. Because right now, a lot of colleges feel conflicted, particularly to say, I'm being told by the state and ICCB to do one thing, but I'm being told by my accreditation to do another. I'm not really sure where to operate here. And so when we think about it opening the door, it would allow, it basically brings these conversations back into Illinois. Rather than HLC making kind of unclear guidance and then us basically trying to interpret that themselves, we would be able to make these decisions in Illinois with post-secondary and secondary at the table to create, a landscape that would benefit everybody and does expand dual credit. Next slide.
Amy, it looks like for some reason I dropped off some of your slides. I have them. I'm going to stop my share and pull them up and reshare in just a second. I don't know why they didn't all get copied into this deck.
There's only, I think, like one left, and I can talk while you're pulling it up too. I don't think it's critical. And I kind of remember the slide. So the next slide is actually talking about that alignment issue. And like I said, I've kind of alluded to throughout the presentation, there is not alignment between HLC's guidance and then what, you know, the state is doing. The PD professional development plans are a great example. We know of post-secondary institutions who don't want to adopt post-sec or PDP plans, those interim qualified programs, because they say doesn't connect to HLC law. That HLC, I'm afraid that HLC is going to come after my accreditation issues if I start allowing interim qualified instructors to teach dual credit. That's just one example of many of ways that Illinois law is not necessarily congruent with HLC policy. On this slide, you could see that I just have, just for kind of reference purposes, the PDP plan, the things that you would be able to, the criteria you would have to have in order to get into those professional development plans. And you can see that it changed back in January. But we actually allow 9 graduate hours in the discipline to be taught to get into these professional development plans, which again, is not clear in HLC's guidance. Again, it gives us an opportunity to simplify our guidance documents, to basically look at what we have and bring them into alignment so that we're not basically putting secondary and post-secondary partners into the position to be duking out, you know, and interpreting these guidance documents during their dual credit partnership negotiations, which hopefully should make stronger, smoother partnerships. And then, as I've said, it empowers Illinois agencies, policymakers, and institutions to determine a statewide criteria, that we're no longer kind of at the whims of HLC, which is obviously they are thinking about this policy in much broader terms than we are in just a dual credit lens. And so it kind of takes them out of this equation. And then, of course, the challenge is similar to the last one, which is that faculty criteria may vary wildly across the state. And that's why I think that if this policy does get enacted, that it would be important to take steps within the state to address, to make sure that there's a uniform criteria, and to make sure that, you know, you don't have some drastically different criteria across post-secondary. Next slide. And so this is the last one. So comments are due the 18th. That is Monday. On that website that I have linked there, you can go to, you can see our letter. We have amended that letter. We've been having a lot of conversations with superintendents who were concerned that this might have them lose some ground a little bit if the post-secondary institution has more control and they've already had difficult, you know, kind of negotiating with them. We think that, again, bringing this policy into the state would benefit most people who are looking to expand dual credit, because then we can, like I said, create laws within the state to govern some of this work rather than having HLC policy. That letter is free to download. It has no logos on it. You are most welcome to take it, make edits to it, submit it to HLC to say you do support it. It is a supportive letter. And so, you know, again, comments are due by the 18th. The next steps, so we're not guaranteed that this will happen. This policy was originally proposed to back in November of 2022. And then in February, there was a request from HLC to comments from HLC members. So post-secondary was given an opportunity to submit those comments. They completed that process early in February. That it moved through that next step, and now it's asking for broad public comment from all entities, essentially. And then they'll review those comments, and then they'll make a final ruling in November. So by November, then we'll know, you know, where this will be, if they're going to make changes to the proposal, or if they're going to adopt it as they've shared it with everybody, or if they are going to throw it out and continue working with the status quo. So we'll know more in November. And I'm going quickly because I anticipate some questions around this. So I will end there and answer any questions.
See, Cassie?
Amy, if this passes, do you see either Stand for Children or another organization writing like sample faculty qualifications to like give institutions a starting point of creating consistency across the state, like recommended or best practices for faculty qualifications? Now, I totally understand you don't have any teeth to make institutions adopt them, but at least trying to start somewhere with consistency.
I think our route would be we would be open to that. But to your point, I don't know that there would be a whole lot of teeth to that. I think we would be comfortable doing it. Emily, I see you came off mute if you want to jump in, but I do think that we would probably move through looking at the Dual Credit Quality Act to make sure that there was some level of consistency across the state.
Yeah, so I think something that we've talked about a little bit internally at Ed Systems alongside other partners kind of coordinating around dual credit policy in the state is thinking about advocating with our state agency partners, obviously certainly predominantly the community college board, to say, like, can we convene strategic people, secondary, post-secondary, et cetera, to do this, to propose some consistent recommendations around equivalent experience for particularly like commonly challenging dual credit course types, right? So like, what are those strategic dual credit opportunities that we want to make sure that we're protecting and scaling across the state, whether that's in core academic coursework or strategic career pathways courses? And how do we kind of focus the work on those, right? So that we can say, we know these are really sticky. Here are some recommendations that have come from the field, much in the same way that, I mean, the model partnership agreement is a formally adopted thing, right? Like that is something that is official and formalized, but like the power in that, frankly, is partly about how formalized it is and that it's a default agreement, but a lot of the power conferred to it is because of the deep kind of stakeholder engagement and kind of cross-sector participation in that work group. So I think, things like, we know that career pathways courses in anatomy and physiology or medical terminology or like web development or computer science, like we know that those are sticky areas. And so how do we kind of potentially convene folks around that? So I think there's appetite for that. I don't, because we were talking about that, like, as Amy said, months and months and months ago before, HLC really moved on any of this. So I think stay tuned. And I think we would definitely keep this group apprised of opportunities to engage in those types of conversations as well.
Thank you, Amy, for.
Can I ask one more question real quick, Laura?
Yeah, sure.
And then if an institution did, if this passes and community college did use this flexibility to design different faculty qualifications, does that in any way jeopardize those courses that are designated IAI? Like the IAI panels can't come back and say, you're using faculty that we wouldn't employ at the U of I or at ISU or at NIU to instruct these classes. And so your IAI designation is now in jeopardy. Because community colleges aren't going to change any of the faculty qualifications on those IAI classes if that would jeopardize the transferability of those classes.
Let me look into that. I have not heard that yet. So I don't believe that would be a conflict, but I would like to double check, to your point. But I do not believe that would be in conflict or create a challenge to IAI. So I'll follow up with you though.
All right. Thanks again, Amy. I think this is something people are always eager for an update on. Just a few more things before we finish up for the day. We relaunched the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary yesterday. So I don't know how many of you are familiar, but we had the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary was originally released in 2018 as a PDF document with many, 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 many pages. But it was a first of its kind resource with the goal of getting practitioners, policymakers across agencies, across education and workforce, all on the same page with career pathway related programs and system elements, making sure that everyone is using different terms in the same ways. So we have been going through a process with all of the state agencies listed at the bottom of this slide to update it, since it has been about 5 years since it was originally published, and it is now a website, pathwaysdictionary.org. I'm actually going to open it up and show you all what it looks like. So this is our home page. One of the goals of making it a website was to make it a little more accessible. Like I said, the original document had many, many, many pages. So here we have a home page with just a list of terms in alphabetical order and some intro language on the side. And then there's also an option to sign up for updates or contact us if you have any suggestions. In terms of finding a term, like I said, they're listed in alphabetical order, but you can also jump from one letter to another or look in some of these categories that we have listed on the side. So say I wanted to look at work-based learning, I can click the W, open it up, and then each term has a definition offered, and then some terms will have additional implementation guidance. So work-based learning has more information about the continuum and its elements. And then it is going to have a citation or a note kind of explaining the source of that definition. So for this particular definition, parts were pulled from Perkins 5, parts were pulled from the PWR Act. But you can see this type of information for all of the different terms. And then we have an About tab that has more information on why offering a career pathways dictionary, a little more context. And then you can see who was involved in this new relaunched dictionary and additional folks who were involved in the first iteration of the dictionary. So that's a very, very brief overview of the dictionary. We are going to be having a webinar, which I thought was on the slide, but I now realize it's not. That webinar is going to be on October 3rd. We'll include the information and the sign up for that webinar in our follow-up materials. If you want to learn more about the dictionary, the process of putting it together, how we determine what was included, those types of things, I would encourage you to join that webinar.
Hey, Laura.
Yes.
Do you know why the term workplace experience wasn't included in the dictionary? That's the only those are the only courses in the CTE world that generate grant funding in the work-based learning space. And so I don't know who the representative from ISB was that was on here, but I'm disappointed to see that workplace experience isn't included on here. And
so, yeah, sorry, I'll flag a couple things. One, I mean, workplace experience is included sort of definitionally in the way that the work-based learning continuum, like in the component parts of the work-based learning continuum. That said, like having that called out, like this is the part of the reason why we moved to a web-based resource is to be able to update it. And so if it needs to be added on its own for clarity and linked to the work-based learning continuum, we can definitely do that. So, you know, I think the reason why we're sticking with the continuum is because that is statutorily defined in the state, and you know we want to kind of standardize language around that. We know that there's some push and pull with things that get defined federally and all that kind of stuff, but calling out workplace learning,
workplace experience.
Workplace experience. Yeah. So, I mean, career development experiences would be inclusive of that. Right. So, but we can figure out, we'll follow up with you about what might make sense in terms of how to incorporate that.
Thanks. I would really appreciate that, because that's one of the terms we're trying to get educators to understand. We don't call it co-op anymore. It's called workplace experience. And it'd be great if it could be in here. There's a couple other things, but maybe Emily, I could just send them to you via email.
Send it to Laura, and
okay.
we
I'll
can
send them to Laura.
and we can definitely keep following up there.
Thank you.
All right. We're running with just a few minutes, so I'm going to kind of breeze through these next few things. Very, very light touch, but obviously if you have more questions about any of these last few things, the slides will be posted. You can also feel free to let me know, and we can check in on them. We have a brief transportation work group update. Basically, we worked in the last school year and a little tiny bit over the summer on some of these goals to explore transportation related barriers to work-based learning. We convened our work group about 3 times, and we really focused on diving deep into making sure we understood the barriers that come up and how they impact students' access. We're in the process of summarizing these initial findings. We've decided we want to do a little bit more. So some of our plans for how we can do a little bit more is to just explore solutions as well as resources. And then we also want to gather student input. We're looking for ways, and this was something I was hoping to have a little more discussion about, but for the sake of time, if you have any ideas here, put them in the chat or email me. We also really want to think about ways to engage the rest of the policy committee and other folks in the arena of work-based learning on this topic, so we can get more knowledge about kind of this piece of the puzzle that often becomes a challenge for students and individuals. So please, if you have any ideas, whether that's things like surveys, whether that's listening sessions, we would love to hear about what you think would be a good way to gather input from more folks about these challenges. This is a brief summary of some of the things that came up in our initial conversations that we're going to be putting into the initial barrier finding piece before we move on to sort of that second piece with our follow-up and more information on some of the things we want to learn more about. Okay, wrap up and announcements. I have 1 minute. If there's anything you want to know more about, you would like to explore in either future policy committee meetings, or you have questions about you want to check in on between this meeting and the next meeting, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. A couple events that are coming up soon to save the date for. We have the Forum for Excellence coming up in just a week or two. The FAFSA Symposium is also coming up. There are 2 locations this year, so kind of hitting different parts of the state with those locations. And then we also have the date set for the Success Network annual conference. That will be in February. If any of you joined us this year, it will be at Moraine Valley again. So just kind of mark those dates. Like I said, these will be in the materials we share. Our next full policy committee meeting is going to be in December. So feel free to register yourself for that. Make sure you get it on your calendar through that confirmation email invitation. Materials will all be posted shortly. And thank you for joining us. And I did it. That was I'm impressed with myself. Thank you all for joining us. We're so happy that you were able to hear from all of our speakers today. Anyone who spoke, thank you for taking the time to share with us. It was great having you.